All right, what's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the NeoVintage podcast. I am Jabrel, and I am with
Steve. How you guys doing?
And for you guys who have never seen the show before, we are just two guys that like to talk over the biggest story in gaming, and we always like to start with what we've been playing. So, Steve, what have you been playing?
All right, so not too much. Still have like my games on the back burner. Mortal Kombat. I don't have much else to say about that because I keep talking about it. Next week I'll have some stuff to say, hopefully, about the DLC that comes out this week. So that's still on my back burner. I'm actually launched up Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Oh, okay.
Some reason in my brain I thought I beat the game, and I have not beat the game.
Oh, really?
So yeah, feel like I'm pretty close now. I have all my abilities now. He's like, oh, I remember everything I was when I was a Jedi, and so I'm kind of going through that, doing a bunch of things. Still a good game. I still love that game. The mechanics feel, now that you have all the abilities, the adventure aspect of it is so much better. Like the double jump, the force pull of vines so you can swing on them, things like that. It just now feels really good. It felt so static and almost like linear in a sense. Now doing that, like when you go to Kashyyyk and you can do the swimming and the little the pods that bounce you back and forth.
Yeah.
It just feels really good, and the game's super solid. So I'm still doing that. I'm hoping to beat that this week because I just kind of want to get it off the docket already. And I would have beaten it if it wasn't for my compulsiveness to not be able to get it. And I'm going to save it more because we have a story about it later. I've been playing Mafia 2, the definitive edition.
Yes.
But I'll save that to incorporate a little bit with more story. But good game. Oh, man. I'll save it more when we incorporate it there. But I've been playing a lot of that. Going through it faster than I remember.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've recently played it too, so.
Yeah, so I'm like, I think in 2 sittings I was already like fighting in the jail.
Oh, wow, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so, but I'll save the rest when we get into that, because besides that, I have not been playing. I've been dabbling in a few things here and there. I jumped into Streets of Rage again to just do a couple more fights, because my brother was over. I played that with him. Besides that, that's all I've really been playing, spreading my time into between Jedi and Mafia 2. It's been pretty full schedule, so I haven't been doing too much else. So what have you been playing? What's going on?
Yeah, so I'm still going through my Final Fantasy Conquest. I beat Final Fantasy 9 maybe a day or two after we recorded the last show. And so most of this week I've actually been moving on to Final Fantasy 10. Now, I told you I was going in with a very, very open mind, and this was the one that I was probably the most apprehensive over. I had played a little bit of it years ago, back when I was playing like original Kingdom Hearts on PS2. So it'd been like an incredible amount of time since I played it, and I didn't make it very deep because, again, I've always acknowledged my bias towards Final Fantasy 6, 7, and 9 definitely being my preference in terms of Final Fantasy games, and obviously there's a marked difference between 9 and 10. And so I wasn't sure how that kind of transition to 3D, voice-acted type game was going to resonate with me, but I was like, you know what, I'm just going to let the game speak for itself and give it a shot. And I'm about 6.5 hours in so far, so I'm decently into the game. And I gotta say, like, I'm actually kind of liking it. I'm enjoying what they're doing, and I'm really, really surprised. I had no clue. Now, a caveat on that, I fully acknowledge that there are some like pretty significant issues with this game. Obviously, the voice acting, specifically with the main protagonist, he sounds absolutely like nuts every time he says anything. So the voice acting is not the strong suit. And I'm sure you guys know I just yesterday made it to the laughing sequence. So that was an interesting scene. Ha 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 ha. Like, I don't know what they were I don't know what they were going for there. But no, other than that, like, I find it's weird because the game is a massive departure kind of like navigationally and visually and aesthetically from a lot of the previous entries. However, some of the systems, other than the sphere upgrading system, are actually pretty traditional. When it comes to like turn-based combat and it not really being that active, like you can kind of really sit there and think. It really brings me back to, Final Fantasy 4 and 5 and even the ones before that point. So that's kind of like an interesting thing. The equipment attaching systems actually simplified going back to like especially 7, 8, and 9. So it's interesting. It's like simultaneously a look back at where the franchise has been and then kind of thrusting some of those more traditional systems into kind of a newer era. I am playing the HD version on Switch, so they cleaned up some stuff. It looks pretty cool. The story's pretty engaging, and I'm giving it a chance, man. And I'm really surprised how much I'm enjoying it. I don't know if I'm gonna love it so much the entire way through and then go on to the second one and still be enjoying it. I don't know. That's a lot of game there. We'll see how it goes. But I'm just going to kind of let that go. And I actually wanted to give a heads up. Right now on Switch, Cosmic Star Heroine is like $1.49. And so I bought that yesterday using the points that I had accumulated on the eShop, so I didn't even have to pay anything out of pocket. So, and for you guys who don't know, that's like an indie title that's stylized over like the older Phantasy Star games, or even if you harken back to like the Final Fantasy VI style game. So I would say if you like Cyberpunk and older RPGs, go give that a look. I'm going to be getting deeper into that, and I'll probably have more to say next week. But those are like, that's like the main game I've been focusing on is Final Fantasy X.
All right, cool. Yeah. So I still have Final Fantasy X on my crossbar because I got it free on PlayStation for something. GameStop, I think, had a buy two get one free something like that. And I tried it a while. I want to say January, I think, is when I remember texting you or Snapchatted you that I was started it. And my main issue, again, I haven't gotten too far into it, and I'm hoping to go back to it, especially now that you're playing. Maybe I can like get in and I don't know. We can bounce off opinions, but it's that pacing at the beginning is super tutorial, and that's what I think really kills that flow for me. But I think I'm hoping once I get back to it eventually, without any prejudgment and stuff, it'll be just an enjoyable experience.
Not to mention, I think Final Fantasy X also has the same issue that I have with a lot of Final Fantasy games. It's not even a Final Fantasy X issue, which is that one extra gimmick, one extra thing that I'm like, I hate this and I don't want this to be here. This, in Final Fantasy IX, for example, that's the card game. I hated that, and I hate it very much. This one is Blitzball. I don't understand it. I don't know what they're trying to do. I couldn't even forget score a goal. I couldn't make it to the other side of the match. I have no clue how that works.
It makes no sense.
I hate it. But thankfully, they don't really tie story progress to like success in that game. So it's very extra. So if you enjoy Blitzball, you can enjoy it and play it as much as you want, kind of like Final Fantasy IX, the card game. But you don't really have to worry about winning, as far as I know. Unlike Final Fantasy IX, where you could avoid the card game the entire time, but then there is one specific point where the story kind of grinds to a halt, and you need to beat 3 rounds of that card game.
Yeah.
Or at least, no, you have to beat at least 2 of the 3 rounds of that tournament. And it's not that bad once you understand how the card game is, but they do a terrible job of explaining it. So, yeah, Final Fantasy always has that extra thing that I'm like, why is this in here? Why am I doing crunches as Cloud? Like, why? It's just, they always got something weird in it. But that's just a Final Fantasy thing, so I'm not going to hold that against Final Fantasy X too much, because, again, they kind of do that with every single game. I'm sure Final Fantasy VIII has something too. I just didn't make it far into 8, so I only made it into, like, the top part of Disc 2, so.
Yikes.
All right, so we have a little segment that we do every once in a while here. We haven't done it since Twin Breaker, and it's basically we just want to give a shout out that we think you guys should be paying attention to. So I just want to give a quick shout out to Saints Row 3 Remastered. Now, this is a game I had talked about some time ago, but I didn't pay too much attention to it. Now, I'm a big Saints Row fan. I play pretty much everything Saints Row. But they've been in a weird trajectory where I wasn't a big fan of 4. Gat Out of Hell was fine. Agents of Mayhem, though not a straight, Saints Row title, is kind of a spiritual successor. Hated that game. So when they announced a remaster, I didn't expect too much of it. But, Steve, have you seen the footage of this game?
So I didn't until you told me that Amazon already had a deal on the Saints Row, only on the PS4 version or something weird like that.
Yeah, the Xbox One's full 40.
The Xbox full 40, so it made that decision super easy.
Yeah.
So once I snagged on that, and I had like some points on there, so I was able to get it even a little cheaper. I went back and looked. First, I looked at the IGN original review, and then I went and looked at the footage of what Saints Row 3 was and Saints Row 3 Remastered looked like, because I had seen what it looked like on Switch, and I was really hoping, of course, that had nothing to do with it, and it's not.
Yeah,
There's a reason.
That was rough.
There's a reason that Saints Row 3 on Switch is not called the remastered version, because it's not. Then I watched, I think it was like a 15-minute side by side, and wow, it looks incredible. The beginning commercial segment, which I think is Pierce getting beat up, and he takes a swig of the energy drink.
Yeah.
It looks crazy. He's got a lot more detail in the face. He's less like a wax doll. Like, he's got some details. He's got like some bumps and some forehead lines and stuff like that. And the game just looks incredible. So not only did they step that section up, I remember loving this game so much on PlayStation 3, and it's been a long time since I've played it. So I'm super excited to really get into it, because this is my favorite Saints Row. I know 1 and 2 are super grounded and a lot more like that GTA competitor at the time.
Yeah.
I really loved what Saints Row 3 did. 4 really went off the wall, and I didn't like it that much. Especially since it was pretty much a reused asset of Saints Row 3.
Yeah, they just the same map.
Yeah, and Get Out of Hell was its own thing, which was fine. My only experience with Get Out of Hell was I played it I don't remember where I was playing it. So to be able to go back to Saints Row 3, which is my favorite one because of the combat and the way the mechanics are, the way the story is it's super like open to have fun with itself and like take care of itself in that aspect. I hope people realize that this is what we want from Saints Row. I guess you would assume 5 or whatever they would do a reboot, is that we want this style. That style, I think, is the pinnacle, where it's not the GTA competitor, because it doesn't have to be. You know, it's not. It's its own thing and its own comedy aspect of it. Like, I remember laughing so much. So that footage looks great. I'm super excited to get this, and it should be coming in this week for me.
Yeah. So by the next show that we do, we'll probably have more thoughts on actually playing the game itself. I just wanted to give a quick shout out. And again, calling this a remaster, I think, is actually selling itself a little bit short, because they actually remade full assets, which you kind of mentioned with the Pierce scene. Mm-hmm. Entire characters kind of remade from the top down, and I mean, this is not just a fresh coat of paint in many ways. It's not as far as a remake. This is not a remake of the game. Don't get that twisted. But they've made a lot of adjustments to the UI, cleaned that up a lot, and I've seen it look like even some changes markedly to some of like the world's AI and stuff like that. Not, I think, rewriting the code so much, but I see marginal examples of population density being altered a little bit and cleaned up a little bit. So they did a really good job with this, and I'm really excited to jump into that by next week.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive in. Alright, so going into the news stories, we got a variety of different kind of news this week. So the first one's more factual than usual. We have like opinions and reactions to. This is a real PC store. This is like a real heavy PC store. So people who aren't really into that tune, there's a website called G2A, which sells PC usually codes. So it'll usually give you the Steam code or the Bethesda code or the Ubisoft key for a game, usually for a crazy discount or like super cheap and stuff like that. And I know Steam usually has like its sales, but those feel a little bit legit. This is like a third party website that you give them money, they give you the code, and then you go to a different launcher to kind of redeem it. And it's always kind of been in a shady area. So the story goes, after years of shrugging off claims that GTA sold stolen keys, they have admitted to shifting copies which were illegally obtained. G2A has, I keep trying to say GTA. G2A has forwarded the following statement intended to show clear, where am I? That it does not, where am I messing up? Okay, the blog post. The blog does not include the word apology or sorry. So their main statement was, we would be the first to admit that our formative years as a company, we took too long to recognize that a small number of individuals were abusing our marketplace. However, the criticism we received was the wake-up call we needed, and over the last years, we have totally committed to tackling any incidents of fraud on our site. Today, some of the most sophisticated property we've installed some of the most sophisticated property anti-fraud AI technology of any online marketplace for digital products. So, I know you're not really into the PC realm, and I'm
No.
fairly new. I've really only been in, like, the PC realm for 2 years. And quickly, this site was brought to my attention. I have a friend who's been PC gamer for a long time. He works at Best Buy. He does this whole big thing. And it's always seemed shady, and I've stayed away from it for that reason. My only experience is I saw my friend, I think, the week after Rage 2 launched. He purchased, through G2A on their website, a key for, like, half off. And immediately I was like, well, that doesn't seem right. That game just launched. Bethesda, everywhere else it was his full 60, he was able to get it for 30. And so since then I was like, this is weird, and I don't know how they're coming across these keys. I hadn't heard much of fraud where they're, like, selling fake keys. Like, people weren't trying to redeem the keys and they had issues with it. So my issue was always kind of wondering, like, how are you getting these keys and then selling them so cheap? And it's always been kind of in the background that they were stealing keys, or there were leftover keys and developer keys and things like that. And there's, like, super, like, theories about it. So it was never, like, upfront about it. And they've always been quiet. They kind of just not said anything, which is why I've always kind of steered away from that website. Like, the only time I was ever tempted, I think, is they were selling, like, Star Wars Jedi on PC, like, super cheap. And I was like, I don't trust this. I was like, I just don't trust this. And the last thing I want to do is, they can track keys for the most part. So it's weird that they're finally trying to, like, half admit that they're like, there may be some shady stuff that we get our keys, or the way the keys are being produced or pulled in. But that's pretty much the facts out there, is that some of these game keys have been stolen. Now, I'm surprised they don't go to the full force of... Again, you can usually track these kind of keys and stuff like that. They're not going out to, like, attack people or, like, shut people's, like, games down. Because, like, again, you usually have to take the key, go to a browser, and put it in. So, like, the Bethesda launcher never flags many people. Again, I've heard, like, very few stories when I looked into it that there were some issues. But as an outsider, what did you think of this kind of news? It was weirdly coming out, like, throughout the week.
Yeah, I mean, so I kind of was... notified of this story, kind of seeing the ongoing lawsuits and, kind of their information on the background being kind of brought to the forefront. So yeah, I would imagine if this is honestly true and there's, real issues with them flipping illegitimate game keys, then yeah, I would imagine this is probably the first of many lawsuits that they're going to probably be faced with. So I don't know if they're necessarily long for this world at this point. I've always kind of loved the kind of, like, discount nature of how PC players are able to get their games. Like, Steam sales are just, like, amazing. And so there being a third party on top of that, finding another way to get even cheaper keys, blew my mind. When I found out, I was like, man, these PC guys, not only do they get to play, like, better performing games and prettier games because of the, without the fact that there's not these technical constraints on PC, but on top of that, they're finding ways to get the games even cheaper than us on console. I'm like, man, shout out to you guys. But yeah, man, I don't know how this company existed in the first place. I know this is not my place of expertise by any means. I was not familiar with this company. I did not use them, but I'm like, how they expected to operate doing this in such a overt manner? Because again, this name apparently was floating out there for quite some time in a very, out there manner, and people knew about this site. Yeah. And I was like, if you guys are flipping illegal keys this out in the open, I can't believe that they've survived as long as they did.
Yeah, it's weird. Again, I don't know how long the site's even been around, but I've always heard of it, and it's not like other websites where, like, there's like a couple pretty big Twitter accounts, Wario64 and them, who always tweet what websites have good deals. Yeah. They will never, to my knowledge, tweet about this website.
I've never seen it.
They'll do, like, Green Man Gaming and all these other ones, and all these other good sources, but I've never seen them do that. And that was always my first sign. I was like, well, Wario64, and I think it's a Cheap Gamer or something like that on Twitter.
Yeah, and IGN Deals doesn't either.
And IGN Deals. I was like, I've never seen them talk about this website. And the website looks legit, and until you start looking into the background. So it's always been a shady thing. And usually if something looks shady, it is shady. Yeah. The internet, we live in a world where everything's pretty transparent. So again, you just can't start selling most of the time AAA games a week, 2 weeks after on a crazy discount. Getting Rage my friend who got Rage the week after launch. Like, I know that game did go on sale pretty quickly, like a month after because of low sales, but the PC version, PC versions, either they get a crazy discount on a Steam sale or something like that, or they stay the same price. Because if I were to go look up Rage 2 right now, I think on Steam, if it even is on Steam, I don't know if they did it exclusive, it'd be $60. So
Yeah.
it's a weird situation. We'll probably hear, it's probably going to end up being either a transformation of the website, where they're probably going to start just like kind of hosting where the deals are, because this is not going to go away. These companies are going to get on top of them, especially once these bigger companies, like, let them try to put like Doom up there. And again, I don't look at the website, so who knows if like Doom and stuff like that are even up there for super low.
Yeah, I mean, well, if there's any updates to the story in any capacity, I'll keep my eyes out and we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, I'm anticipating, if anything, the next story is going to be these guys being shut down.
Yeah.
But who knows? So I guess we can move on to the next story at this point then. So a new online showcase was announced, and it's called New Game Plus Expo. And I know you guys are already rolling your eyes. Oh, great, another online expo. But I think what's notable about this announcement is the partners that that's going to be showcased during this expo. The big names include Sega, Atlus, Natsume, Spike Chunsoft, Koei Tecmo, Arc System Works, Any Creates, NIS America, Axis Games, WayForward, SNK, and then there's a couple more of smaller teams at that point. So we got some big names, and obviously this is skewed way more towards the Japanese market at this point.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts about this? I know a lot of these teams you love as much as I do.
Yeah, so again, I did the exact same thing where they're like, a new game expo announced. I was like, oh, geez, why? Because everyone's switching to online showcase and stuff like that, and that's fine. Usually just the way they deliver is where I'm more worried about. But yeah, when I looked at this lineup, Sega, Atlus, Spike Chunsoft, Koei Tecmo, SNK, all these kind of, I was like, oh, this is the Japanese ones, and these are the guys who are, besides Sega, who's usually pretty public, and Atlus and all them. These are those guys constantly rolling out those anime-styled games, not necessarily anime games, but like the games that look anime, like Code Vein and all these kind of things. These are the companies that they sell their games sell because these games are constantly rolling out, and you'll see a weird anime game part 5, and then you'll see Spike Chunsoft or Natsume or Koei. Someone's always involved with that, so I'm super excited to see what they have, because getting that information directly to us is super exciting. The fact that it's not going to be amongst this huge game show with tons and tons of AAA games and tons of indies and them kind of lost in the middle. Like, they're going to be like, hey, we're going to announce something on this day at this time. Tune in. That's the way I like my information. Be like, at this time, this is going to be, something's going to be revealed at this time. You can watch it on our stream on YouTube or wherever you feel like it. So that aspect makes me excited, because I hate when these games get lost. Like Code Vein, when it was even announced, was always kind of faded in or stuck in between like two giant games, and people didn't really know about it. Luckily, that game did sell very well. But these are some of the companies where I feel sometimes get lost because they're not the big names, and like they're smaller, or they make one certain type of game. So luckily, I like that they're gonna have their own spotlight. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, not to mention, what excites me the most about this expo is the diversity of teams, capabilities. Of course, you got like Sega, which is a massive publisher that you can get just about anything from them. That could be anything from Sonic to, God knows what. And Atlus is a very similar in that regard, but you got Spike Chunsoft with the more visual novel type stuff with Danganronpa.
Yep.
Arc System Works and SNK can introduce something in the fighting game arena. Any Creates and WayForward obviously are like two of the best teams right now doing pixel art right now. So you get something from that. NIS, one of the few publishers alongside with Atlus that kept the Vita alive for a long time.
Yeah.
So these are just some awesome teams that are doing things that in many ways the rest of the industry have long moved past. But this New Game Plus Expo has done a great job in kind of diversifying its portfolio of things to show off. So we can get, arcade games, fighting games here, shooters. Like, we can get all types of different stuff that is really, really exciting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would just wanted to bring up this story because I didn't want anybody to look past this, because I think of the online shows revealed, obviously IGN has their thing, Jeff Keighley has his thing, but again, those are very broad shows that are going to take their time kind of revealing things over time, and it can range in terms of content, but this is one big show with a lot of big names attached to them that I think is worth actually looking at. This is not just, some random, hey, Ubisoft's doing a show or EA's doing a show. Like, this is something pretty big to keep your eye on. And so if you have any inclination towards, output out of Japan, this is something to pay attention to, probably more than all the other shows combined.
Yeah, because these are the constant big hitters.
Yeah.
Where, these other companies usually go once every 6 years and, amp up their game, and Naughty Dog, comes out and then goes quiet for a long time. These are the guys who I don't know how they do it, constantly just releasing games every year and of pretty good quality. Yeah, and like you said, diversity. You get the visual novels that crank out like a lot crazier and all these options. So it's going to be a packed full like expo. So I'm excited for that. I'm really excited for that. All right, next to the next story, which is we're going to unfold a lot here because we haven't had time to talk on the show or even on the channel at all. Bethesda. So this comes from everyone harassing Pete Hines on where Elder Scrolls 6 is and where Bethesda's Starfield is, and what happened with the reveal a long time ago where they showed the splash screen of Elder Scrolls 6. So after constant people tweeting at him and stuff like that, he did come out with a small statement, I guess. I don't know if you can even call it that. He goes, don't expect details on the Elder Scrolls 6 until years from now. That comes from Pete Hines. So responding to a tweet asking for information about the next game, he tweeted, "It's after Starfield, which you pretty much know nothing about. So if you're coming at me for details now and not years from now, I'm failing to properly manage your expectations." You fail to hold our expectations and manage our expectations when you haven't showed footage of what your next game is supposed to be on the docket, and you show us a splash screen of one of the a sequel to one of the greatest games to some people greatest games ever, Skyrim, and then not say anything about it for years. So when I saw this, I thought it was dumb for them to kind of come at them, but I think some people don't realize, aren't really in the world or really in the ecosystem to realize that Bethesda used Elder Scrolls 6, that splash screen at their conference, I don't even know what it was, 4 years ago or whatever it was. They used that as a marketing thing to try to gain some points back. People were really riding Bethesda on the stuff that, the Fallout, like the Fallout of Fallout 4, the Fallout of Fallout 76, and Rage, and all these weird games that they were doing in their experiments, and their reputation was on the line. So they try to gain some points quickly by just saying, "Don't worry, a sequel to what you guys really loved is coming." So what did you think of his response to this, and then the way this actually kind of has rolled out? So the way the Elder Scrolls reveal is being treated in general. What's your kind of opinion on that?
Yeah, so to contextualize his statement, basically what he's saying, because I've seen a lot of people read into this, and what I took from this is he's like, listen, we haven't even started the marketing for Starfield yet, and you're asking about the next game. So you're not really understanding, our game plan here. My issue with that is, if you are so far from revealing Starfield, why have you even mentioned Elder Scrolls 6? And their defense at the time was, oh, so people know to temper their expectations. They know kind of our long plan. And I guess this was kind of like a push towards transparency on the surface. And then obviously this was kind of a diversion and a bit of filler for a lackluster show that they had, I believe, 2 years ago. So that was an obvious, they had a lackluster show. They didn't have much to show. And what they did have to show was incredibly unremarkable and was obviously going to elicit a pretty negative response from the viewing public. So they wanted something that, undoubtedly would elicit a positive response, which is Elder Scrolls. It's something people have been asking for God knows how long. Skyrim came out in 2011. So it's been a really long time. And obviously, in hindsight, I think this strategy has proved to be kind of not a great one. I mean, now, anytime Pete Hines says anything, anytime the name Bethesda pops up on anything, where is Elder Scrolls 6? More so than it was before. Because before you were kind of talking about this ethereal concept kind of like a Half-Life 3, at one time maybe even like a Kingdom Hearts 3. This thing that you know is somewhere out in the ether, but we haven't had formal confirmation of. So you'll have the people being like, hey, where's that? Are you guys going to make that or what? But it was kind of always a given that they were eventually going to return back to Elder Scrolls. I mean, it's a massive franchise, so that's going to happen. Bethesda is not Valve. Like, they keep up the output. It just takes them an incredible amount of time for specifically Bethesda game studios to develop games. They're not known for their speed. But now that they formally, quote-unquote, announced it with that splash screen, with no real timetable other than years out, I mean, that can mean a lot of things. And not to mention, again, COVID throws things out for a loop, so this game could be even farther out than we thought it was. Who knows? So it just makes me wonder, how they feel about this strategy laying out, because to me, it seemed kind of like a stupid decision to make. I'm not even paying attention to Elder Scrolls, to be honest. Again, that's so far out. I'd be surprised if that's like a PS5 game to begin with. Like, I mean, who knows? That could not even be this gen for all we know. But I'm curious about Starfield most of all, because I don't think people are realizing how unfortunate of a position they're in. Because basically they're like, oh, this is going to be basically Fallout in space. Awesome idea. We kind of got that with Outer Worlds.
Yeah.
It's literally Fallout in space.
Yep.
So not only is Starfield years out, but it's coming out. It got beat out by another game that is essentially doing something very similar. Now, they could go for a completely different aesthetic. That could happen. But I would imagine they're already working at a disadvantage with the fact that they have a new IP. The name, the kind of clout and fervor around their name has died down significantly than the last time they dropped. And then on top of that, a lot of people are looking at Starfield as kind of the reason why we're not getting Elder Scrolls, which is not good PR to have for a new IP.
That's true.
A lot of people are looking at this as kind of like a placeholder. Like, this is the reason why this game is getting slowed down. Let's get this out of the way so we can get to the good stuff. And that is not the kind of talk you want around a new IP. I have no doubt that this game's going to perform well. I'm sure it will. But they have a lot of work to do. And I know he's saying, okay, we haven't even started our marketing for Starfield, so don't ask about Elder Scrolls. You better start that marketing soon, because you're fighting an uphill battle, and I don't know if Bethesda realizes that quite yet. But again, they're not a stupid company, and Pete Hines is a guy I have a tremendous amount of respect for, and he does not come off as stupid to me in any form or fashion. So as of right now, I'm going to give him the good faith, give them the benefit of the doubt, and see how they play out. But as of right now, I think Bethesda really shot themselves in the foot with this strategy.
Yeah, and I think that's the general consensus. People aren't demanding for Elder Scrolls 6 to come out. Obviously, they've been demanding it for a while, but a game like that takes a long time to build and a long time to do, because you have all these mechanics, from choices to character customization to battle to the size of the world and story missions and all that stuff. These kind of games take a long time. You can't just turn them around in 2-3 years, especially when you want to hold them to a caliber and like style and like scale that you have, that you're known for. Again, they did, like we all knew when we saw that Elder Scrolls 6 splash screen, is that they were using it to just try to calm people down. They were on fire because people just weren't with it, with them in general, because of all the mistakes they were doing. They were trying to show also, they were like, Fallout 76 is our multiplayer experience, but we still have single player games. See, we still have Starfield, which most people forgot that was the thing, and don't worry, Elder Scrolls 6 is coming. And it's so far off that Elder Scrolls 6 doesn't even have a title. Where Elder Scrolls 5 is Skyrim, then you had Oblivion. This one legit just is still called Elder Scrolls 6. And like you said, we haven't seen anything of Starfield. We haven't seen gameplay. We don't know what the story is, what the mechanics are. What's it gonna? It has to do things that Outer Worlds did, but better. Because Outer Worlds was very good. Outer Worlds, people still talk about that game because it was able to clearly show what it wanted to do, and it did what it wanted to do. Where now it's Bethesda's turn to try to up the ante, and that's just for Starfield. You now have their Elder Scrolls 6 games, which, what are they going to do there? Because now they not only do they have to top Skyrim, they have to top The Witcher, which is very similar in the themes and the world and monsters and all that kind of stuff. They're not the only guys in the court doing this now. It's It's very difficult because you now have to be like, well, why would I spend $60 to play on your broken engine? It always comes out with tons of bugs, terrible. The bad voice, acting, and they don't. I don't know their rigmarole on motion cap because the lip syncing is usually pretty terrible. Like, why would I spend $60 on all this nonsense, assuming the game is $60, when I can get Witcher 3 for $15, or just re-download The Witcher, which has, it looks incredible on all the systems, and it'll be backwards compatible, hopefully completely with the Xbox Series, so you can play it on there. On PC, it looks incredible. The mechanics are there. People love it because of the show are reintegrated with it. It has this huge world. It has monsters. What are you gonna offer to? What are you gonna offer that's better? You can't just keep releasing your same game. And my biggest issue with Bethesda is their engine. That engine is terrible. If they launch Starfield on that same engine and then not fix it, they're gonna go slightly the way of Telltale.
Yeah.
With their games, Telltale refused to change their engine, fix their engine and fix their release schedule. And look what happened to them. So, I know Bethesda's a way bigger dog than that, and they have tons of other stuff. Luckily they can slowly rely on, id and all these other companies they have. But for actual Bethesda game studios to come out swinging with Starfield and to flop will be something that people will continue to talk about, because it'll be the fall of a giant. Fallout 4, even though it wasn't like this crazy good experience for some people, I really enjoyed it. It's kind of my favorite Fallout game, side and side by New Vegas.
Yeah.
But it didn't reset the world on fire. It was exciting. People were talking about it also because of the release schedule. They announced it 4 months ahead of time. It had a good constant streams and gameplay and trailers, and boom, the game was out. We've been hearing about Starfield forever. We're gonna be hearing of others. We've heard stuff about Elder Scrolls 6 like 3 years after Skyrim. So it's been 6 years at this point that we've been hearing murmurs, and yes, we're working on Elder Scrolls 6. Don't mention it. My thing is, don't mention it. That's like if at the Last of Us 2 review they're like, oh, we're also working on Uncharted 5. And I know Naughty Dog's not doing Uncharted 5, but it's in that caliber where you're like, show us the one thing you're working on and show us that you're invested in that thing. Don't show us this spread of, don't show us this huge fishnet with all these little fishes. Show us the big boy. Show us, look, this is why you should get this game. Not, well, we're going to make this game and then hopefully we can switch over to what you guys really want. The main course. It's don't do that. That's just a terrible strategy. And I don't think we're going to see that much. They do need to start, like you said, they got to start talking about Starfield, because most people don't even know that game exists. Every time I bring it up to another friend of mine, and he's this huge Bethesda fan, he's like, I forget. He's like, I thought they were working on Elder Scrolls 6. I'm like, yeah, that's the problem, because they're going to release Starfield, and people are going to be like, well, where's Elder Scrolls 6?
Yeah.
And these kind of tweets and these messages of, trying to temper people's expectations, you did it yourself. You put yourself on a pedestal and said, Elder Scrolls 6, and you were screaming it into the universe, when you should have been reeling it back, just talking about, hey, we're really excited about Starfield. And Starfield has its own battle to do, because people still hold the Mass Effect trilogy very high, and between BioWare and Bethesda, there's a lot of similarities in their style of games, in my opinion. So, and then on top of the rumors that Mass Effect trilogy is getting a remaster, that's going to be fresh in people's mind, and especially Mass Effect 2, which is, I think, most people's favorite Mass Effect. You're going to have a competition, because what is Starfield? Should we expect Mass Effect? Should we expect Space Skyrim? What do we expect to look at? And that's where they're really in trouble, in my aspect. And my view is that they dug themselves in a hole, and now they're struggling to get out, and no one's helping them out.
Yeah, well, Pete Hines and Todd Howard, I mean, they're not stupid guys, and they got more than enough time to figure out a good game plan at this point. People are rushing them, but at the same time, no one's operating on a timetable thinking that they're going to move fast with any of these things. Yeah. So I say at this point, listen, what the damage is done. They rolled out a stupid strategy. At this point, get your release schedule down, get your marketing down, commit to Starfield, go full investment on that, and say, listen, this is the product we're selling now. We know we told you about A, B, and C later down the line, but today we're talking about this, and for the foreseeable future, we're talking about this. And then once you move past that point, it's released, it's out in the ether, then you could pivot onto Elder Scrolls at that point. But we'll have our eyes out on them, and again, ultimately, Bethesda Game Studios, whether in a good position or not, they are still generally accepted as one of the bigger teams in the game industry. And Elder Scrolls is going to be one of the best-selling games of that year whenever it does come out. So,
yeah,
you know, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt for now, but it's something to keep our eyes out on. So I guess we can move on to the next story, and this is an update on last week's story regarding the Mafia collection. So now we have a little bit more details as to what specifically we're getting here. So as we spoke about last week, 2K Games is releasing a remastered versions of all 3 of their Mafia games. The update to that is that the first title is actually getting closer to a full remake, which will be available with the full trilogy collection on August 28th. And the remastered of 2 and 3 are out now. And if you actually have the Steam version of Mafia 2, you can upgrade to the new remastered version of Mafia 2 for free. And any version of Mafia 3 for both the consoles and the PC can be updated to the remastered version of Mafia 3. I don't know much about what the Mafia 3 version remaster even looks like because, again, Mafia 3 is not that old of a game. So I'm assuming they probably just brought in all the DLC and maybe cleaned up some of the maybe lighting and engine issues with 3 and kind of cleaned it up a little bit. But you said that you've been playing the Mafia 2 remaster. So what are your thoughts about this and how are you enjoying the remaster?
Yeah, so I was excited for this, especially I love when people are like, and it's available now. That's a super good mechanic, especially now when everyone's home, you know. So the Mafia 3 thing before I jump to the Mafia 2. So from what I've seen, and I jumped in just to kind of see it a little bit. They did kind of just like clean a few things up. Their main thing is all the DLC is free if you own Mafia. So if you got Mafia 3 on PlayStation Plus last year, whenever they gave it away, if you go in now, all the DLCs in there marked as free. So if that's your game, hey, look, there's more stuff if you never got those DLCs and special weapons and stuff like that. So I've been in the Mafia 2 game, obviously. I've been playing that for quite a few hours. And I was super excited because I have such little experience with Mafia 2. Like, I've played it before, but I never really was in the story and stuff like that. And I couldn't remember it. You know, this was 2011 was Mafia 2?
Around then, yeah.
And I love this kind of vibe you get when you immediately launch it and the music just starts up and you're seeing, you know, the city, which, you know, it's Empire Bay is what they call it, which is kind of a mix of like New York, Chicago, San Francisco, like Detroit and Boston, all kind. I always, in my head, I thought it was like New York. I don't know why I thought they actually used New York, but it's like a mixture of all these cities put together. But it feels so good to just be like driving around in like the 1940s, and it's like, yeah, it's like it's like late 1940s, I believe, when the game's taking place.
It starts in one decade and kind of moves into the next one halfway through.
Yeah, when you jump through, yeah. So yeah, so it's like late 1940s into early, you know, the 50s, and it's super cool to see the style, to see all the cars, to have the radio playing and have them talking about, you know, like what's going on with the war, and they're like, they're talking about the big 3 and decisions like that. It's such a weird aspect because we don't really see many games anymore take on that section, which I think is it's a big mistake on people not trying to capitalize on that, which is why I think Mafia is going to really strike that chord, because the whole Mafia mob feel is super popular. I mean, we got that what was that movie that just came out recently, but the big mob movie on Netflix, Irishman really captivated that. You know, people love The Sopranos and stuff like that. And so jumping into this game, the storytelling's super good. It's super streamlined in a sense where it's not like a super bloated open world game. Like you can take your time doing some side missions and getting money to get some suits and looking all cool in your suits and stuff like that. But I forgot how good of, you know, some of these characters are. Joey and Vito are like really good with each other. Their interactions are with each other very well. A lot of the stuff's been cleaned up. I had to go look at screenshots of and some videos of the original Mafia 2 because I don't remember what it looked like, and it's less what they did with like Saints Row, where Saints Row looks like significantly like better. This one, you know, they kind of, you know, sharpened up some edges, cleaned up some colors, made it a little bit more solid, taking advantage obviously stronger engines, 8 years after your release, can kind of put the game in. I haven't had many pop-ins, not that I noticed. I'm trying to think of any glitches. I don't really remember any. The only glitch is sometimes when you wear a hat, for some reason my forehead comes through the hat. That's a weird thing.
Okay.
And I'm playing it on Xbox, on Xbox One X.
So did they have a 4K upgrade on the Mafia 2? Because I know 3 does.
I'm trying to think now. I believe it is.
Okay.
Well, because I have I rebought the trilogy. Like I didn't own Mafia, so
okay.
I'm playing like just what the version is that they had there. I'm trying to think if they upscaled it to 4K. It's hard. It's kind of hard to tell. In the 2011 game, it looks like it though, because when I'm driving through the snow and stuff like that, there are some like small particles and stuff like that, and they look a little bit cleaner. I'm trying to think. I want to say it's like it's upscaled for sure to 4K.
Okay.
So it does look very smooth, and it plays very smooth. I mean, besides that, I have no complaints with the actual port of it, and the actual remastered of it. I don't want to call it a port. My one complaint is the same complaint everybody has: is that weird melee system in Mafia. Yeah. Besides that, I'm having a lot of fun with it. It is a little bit shorter than I remembered. I don't know if I'm just kind of streamlining it. I'm not spending a lot of times like stealing car and selling it to the junkyard and stuff, but yeah, I'm going through chapters like. The first sitting, I was already in chapter 6 or something like that. I was like, I wasn't like purposely like just busting through, but the story's good. You want to see Vito kind of. I was like, I gotta get the money from Mama, so she has to pay off her her debts and stuff that your dad left, and little things that just make me smile though. Like when you go to like work at the dock, and I'm putting boxes away, and like after the 4th box, he automatically is like, I'm not doing this, and you walk and you gotta like. Enforce people to pay their haircut dues and stuff that just fit in that time and era, and the things you really can't do in like game set place. And like if you look at like GTA, you can't have them go shake people down to pay their haircut dues and stuff like that. So I'm really excited for it. I'm super excited to look into when they do Mafia the 1 remake, which is August. So I'm glad they didn't release them all at once, because then you're like kind of overwhelmed. I think it's smart putting 2 and 3 together, obviously, because 3 is less liked. So if people aren't going to jump into that, you can buy them separate if you needed to. If you have a specific Mafia game, you get a better deal if you buy the trilogy. I think for $60 you get all 3.
Yeah.
If not, I think Mafia 1, the Mafia 1 remake is going to be $40, and then the other 2 games are $30 if you don't own them already. But yeah, that's my kind of thing for Mafia. It's good.
Yeah, so it seems like this one, or at least for Mafia 2, is way more of like a traditional remaster.
Yeah,
they're not remaking assets or anything like that. I replayed Mafia 2 literally maybe 3 months ago or so, like that. So it wasn't that long ago. I played it through Xbox One backwards compatibility because I have it on disc for 360. Mm-hmm. And obviously they do a little bit of cleaning up when you play on backwards compatibility there, but again, since I played it not so long ago, there's not much for me to revisit in terms of a remaster here. Yeah. This game, if you guys haven't played, it's a fairly linear game. It's a linear game set in an open world, so there's no real kind of like you pull up kind of a list here, and there's a list of side quests to go there. There's nothing really to do there. The more diversions come from your own interest. So if you want to go around stealing cars and having shootouts and stuff like that, you can do that. Kind of like the older GTA games, but there's nothing kind of like on paper like, hey, go do this side quest completely separated from the story. Mm-hmm. It's not really structured like that. The game is not long at all. I think I beat it in under 12 hours. So if you don't screw around in the city and you just go from mission to mission to mission, you could easily do that. There's no leveling up or anything like that. You amass more than enough money there to kind of afford extra ammo, extra outfits, and stuff like that, kind of just going through the story naturally. So I would say that if you've never played this game, definitely give it a shot. But in terms of replayability, if you've played it relatively recent, maybe hold out for the Mafia 1 remake. Mm-hmm. Because that one, and if you definitely haven't played 3, I say give that a shot, because 3 definitely has its issues, but it's a very different experience, and I really, really enjoy what they kind of wanted to do there from a narrative perspective. So if you want to play 1 and 2, give 3 a shot too, because I think there's a lot of good stuff to be had there. I think the gameplay loop of 3 is not so great. It's very repetitive, but I think the world they kind of set up there is pretty awesome in its own regard.
Yeah, again, for people, if they're thinking about Mafia 2, yeah, if you know the first one or the original one very well, there's nothing added to my knowledge and the only thing they add is I think they put a bonus outfit of Clay from Mafia 3, his jacket.
There's a little DLC too there for 2.
You can wear it in 2 right from the get-go, but I don't know why you'd want to do that. It's got the wrong name it has the wrong name tag and it doesn't fit Vito, so that's the only real difference. But for Mafia fans, it's a good time out there, and we'll have more opinions when the first the remake of the first one comes out. All right, moving on to a small detail, and this fits us very well because we're huge fans. We even did a little small gameplay of this. Ubisoft is potentially teasing the return of the delisted Scott Pilgrim game. Ubisoft is teasing the return of the infamous delisted Ubisoft Montreal Scott Pilgrim game that launched back in 2010. Scott Pilgrim creator Brian Lee O'Malley tweeted, "Bring back the Scott Pilgrim game." This was in conjunction and collaboration with that they're re-releasing the movies in theater with like Dolby Sound, and that kind of stuff. And obviously he tweeted with hashtag bring back the Scott Pilgrim game, hashtag watch with the Academy, to which Ubisoft responded with the thinking emoji face. And the real reason this kind of picked up trend is because anytime people have been tweeting at Ubisoft and stuff like that for the Scott Pilgrim game, they stay silent. They do not mention on it. They don't tweet at Brian Lee O'Malley. They don't tweet at people who request it. They really don't say anything. So the fact that they actually took their time to not just respond, they respond to the creator, So I'm pretty well feeling, especially now with the re-release of the movie and the kind of hype again. I think this game's coming back, and I cannot wait. Especially, you and I, we played it a while ago on the channel on 360. Or was my PS3? Anyway, I got it on 360.
It was your 360.
The 360, yeah, because the PS3 didn't want to work. It works now, and it sucks because I don't have all the deals. I'm missing the DLC where you can play as Steven Stills, I believe.
Okay.
So it sucks, but I'm excited for this. And I know you're excited for this. I'm the only thing I'm probably thinking is one big criticism people had on this game is you could not do any online play, which would suck. And I'm assuming they're probably going to put that in now. This is coming back. I feel it. Like, it's coming back. I want it back. I hope I'm not just being teased by this because I want Scott Pilgrim back.
Yeah, well, he didn't even at Ubisoft in the tweet. So they kind of went out of their way to respond to him. Mm-hmm. And there's no way a company like Ubisoft, as big as Ubisoft, like teases us like this. There's no way. So, I would be mind blown if we don't see something related to this game. Obviously, this is some kind of digital distribution license issue that has kind of held this game up for a long time. Mm-hmm. It's by no means something that has to do with lack of wants, because again, there's been fan fervor to have this game for well over a decade now. So yeah, this has to be coming back in some capacity. I've seen people for years now badgering Brian Lee O'Malley for where's this game? And for you guys who don't know, he is the original author and artist for the comic. He didn't make the game. He's not a game developer. He has shown no, wish to kind of hold up the license on his end. So this is definitely something on the back end that they're having trouble clearing. That I think if they had no intention on clearing that up and re-releasing, they would just continue not acknowledging it or give us the Nintendo we have nothing to announce at this moment. So the fact that they're doing thinking face emoji shows that they're at least working on it, in some capacity, if not done already, and that is incoming relatively soon. And hey, what I will say is, if you guys are going to release this, for the love of God, give us a physical version, so there's no chance of you guys pulling this stunt again. Yeah. You know what imagine they just do digital only again.
Because then you got to download it and keep it installed forever.
No, I don't, because I don't trust y'all with this game. I don't trust you. Yeah. So if you guys are going to do this, give me a physical version. So, hey, do what you got to do, digital distribution worth. I want that on cart so I can put that into my system 20 years from now and not have to worry about you guys yanking the license again.
Yeah, that's true. If they don't do physical, my one suggestion to the world out there, whoever's listening to this, and I hate to do it because I love Sony, you gotta get it on Xbox because that way it will always be in your marketplace backwards compatible.
Yeah, and they've done a great job with that.
So that's my only. If they do not release it physical,
I want this on Switch, man.
Yeah.
That's where I want to play this.
But they're not going to do it physical on Switch. Oh, they might. Maybe
every once in a while.
Maybe limited runs or someone will make a deal with them. But that's my thing. If they only do a digital thing, my suggestion, and of course, yeah, you got to get the Switch version to have it on the go. Also, that's my one suggestion out there is get it on Xbox, people, because at least it will be backwards moving forward in some capacity, and most capacity. We don't know what Sony's doing with backwards compatibility, so yeah. I'd hate for people to get that and then not be able to play it when, unfortunately, if something happens to the license. So hopefully Universal and Ubisoft kind of figured it out. I know Universal, with the re-release of the movie, they must have been refreshing some contracts and stuff, so hopefully we hear something very soon.
Not to mention, this is a perfect time for them to come back with Streets of Rage back and River City Girls, as popular as it is, an arcade pixel art brawler like Scott Pilgrim made as well as it is. I mean, this is the perfect time for them to come back. There's a resurgence in these type of games, and it'll be received amazingly right now. And if there was any time for it to release and try to maximize on sales, right now is the time to do it. So Ubisoft, if you're doing it, get that out, man.
They got it. Hopefully they crank it out soon.
Yeah, so I guess we can move on to the last story of this week, and it's all about the Call of Duty game that has been kind of rumored and floated around for a long time. So according to a tweet that has since been corroborated by Eurogamer, this year's game will be called Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. Now, it's important before I continue with reading that this is not something that Activision has expressly confirmed yet. So even though it's been corroborated by Eurogamer, I do want to at least put it in the rumor camp for now until we get that formal announcement, because who knows what can happen from now till then. The Black Ops Cold War name first appeared on Twitter by leaker Okami13, and Eurogamer has since reported it's heard the same news from its sources. In the background, these are unnamed sources right now. This means that much like 2019's Call of Duty Modern Warfare, developer Treyarch is going back to where Call of Duty Black Ops started, a stark change from the future-based Warfare Black Ops series traded in with its third and fourth installments. So it looks like they're kind of going back to that quote-unquote boots-on-the-ground gameplay as kind of like a move back from kind of the Crisis, Titanfall, wall-running, crazy jetpack futuristic shooters that they've been doing for a while now. And people have wanted them to go back, but you have to keep in mind that Call of Duty Black Ops 3 and 4 sold great. So these games are selling whether they're in the future or the past, to be honest. But just because you go back to the past doesn't mean that you automatically get success. Call of Duty World War II sold great, but critical reception was a little bit meh, and the lifeline of that game didn't last as long as a lot of the previous titles. People kind of moved on from World War II a lot faster than the previous titles. So the success of this game, I think, is completely dependent on, obviously, the multiplayer suite that they offer. A good campaign speaks a lot to me, and if they're doing a campaign in the Cold War, I'm there day one, guaranteed. But again, the online suite, the integration of the Warzone mode and all that will kind of make or break this title. So do you have any interest in this game?
So I'm not a huge Call of Duty fan in general, but I am a huge Black Ops fan. And I'm a huge fan of Treyarch. So my first Call of Duty game when I was in high school and was able to scrunch up enough money for a PS3 was World at War. World at War, which was, had the zombies for the first time and all that kind of stuff. And I play the story all the time. I wasn't good I didn't try to be good online, especially since it was a year after the game had come out. I think Modern Warfare 2 was out already when I was playing World at War. Couldn't afford Modern Warfare 2. But I love that story. I love the aspect of it. I loved everything about it. And one thing is, Call of Duty's, people will try to get at Call of Duty at the time, but their shooting and their story writing is usually pretty top notch. So I usually really follow the Black Ops series. So I love Black Ops 1. Black Ops 2, if I remember, it was the last midnight launch I went to get the care package edition that came with a little foam droid and stuff like that. And I super loved Black Ops 2 online. Their story was already starting to get kind of weird, where they were trying to do branching stories and decisions and less character based. Black Ops 3 went, I don't even remember. I don't know. I remember playing the campaign. I think the final boss is a USB drive or something like that. Something stupid. But and then Black Ops 4 was no campaign. So I'm a super big fan of Black Ops. So I was worried when we heard that Treyarch was taking over, because this wasn't supposed to be their year. They took over someone else's year or something like that, correct? If I don't remember.
I believe. Yeah, they
someone else
doubled
was,
back to Black Ops. It was supposed to be Sledgehammer, I think.
Sledgehammer was supposed to happen or something like that. So they quickly changed. Hopefully that doesn't mean that they had to rush it, and because I'd hate for the Treyarch to be the one to get the short stick on this. So I'm excited for them to get back into more of that older time, because that was the big thing about Black Ops was, instead of, Modern Warfare was a big thing, we've had tons of World War II shooters, so when they started going on to these smaller sections, these smaller wars, and the stuff that was going on with Black Ops 1 with Mason and that character and the brainwashing, and he ends up being the guy who, spoiler, kills JFK and stuff like that, and all these kind of crazy things that they were able to do in Black Ops 1. I'm excited for them to really take it back. I'm curious on how they're going to see, because as we see, Warzone is making a lot of money and people are super populated on it. How you incorporate that? Like, you can't just change the whole game and make it into to fit that Cold War aspect. And I don't see them doing what they did with Black Ops 4, where they just abandoned that Battle Royale. That Battle Royale's still up, obviously, but to most extent, they abandoned that Battle Royale, a Blackout, I think was what they called it, and now it's all about Warzone. I don't see them doing the same thing where they're like, all right, no more Warzone, now it's Black Ops, whatever they call Battle Royale. So it's going to be interesting. I'm curious also because they really ran that zombie thing into the ground, because they let every Call of Duty have the zombie game, instead of letting just Treyarch take care of it.
Yeah.
They all had it for a while, so it's like, what do you do? How do you fulfill that full package? Because you can't just expect people to be like, well, no, there's another third mode. It's Warzone. Here it is. And patch it in or whatever they end up doing. So I'm excited for this, for mainly the campaign. That's where I really live with Call of Duty now. The run and gun aspect of like the multiplayer doesn't speak to me much anymore. I still know it's super popular. Again, I dabbled in the Warzone, and the shooting's great, but the story is where I really live with these games now, especially like Modern Warfare was a really cool prequel to the Modern Warfare series. So that's where my opinion is. I kind of assume this is true, because every May is when they announce the next Call of Duty game. So it's the fact that we have not gotten something official yet, or something teasing yet, because they usually do like some weird counter, or Activision will just randomly post a counter for some random date and they announce it. Again, we still do have another week in May. I can't remember last time a Call of Duty game wasn't announced in May. I can't even think. They usually announce them in May. I don't know. So it's weird that they haven't done it yet. I'm assuming now that this is starting to leak, before we know it, I don't know, GameStop's going to leak a poster. I think that's how Black Ops 2 was.
Amazon France.
Or yeah. The homeboys in Amazon France. Yeah. Yeah, they'll put the whole game, all the deluxe editions. They leaked, I think, if I remember, Black Ops 4, their highest collector's edition was I think the Zombie Crate or something like that. They just had the whole thing out and the game wasn't even announced. So it was wild. Black Ops 2, I think I remember walking into GameStop and they had the posters up. They're like, hey, we were told to put these up today. But I was like, the game's not even announced. They're like, yeah, we can pre-order it right now. And I pre-ordered it right there. So Call of Duty has that weird thing where people are expecting this announcement in this month. So they might as well kind of just get off the pot and announce it.
Yeah, I mean, I have like a strange relationship with Call of Duty because we're kind of like the obvious minority who play the campaigns and kind of like that's kind of like the first thing we go to, if that's the only thing we go to. So I've always kind of had the experience. It's like, yeah, I buy it once a year, play it for like a week or two until I beat the campaign, and then I kind of just move on. And so this one, hey, if it's in the Cold War, I'm not much into future shooters. Hey, I'm there. I like that era. If it takes place like in the 80s during like the Cuban Missile Crisis and stuff like that with our relationship against Russia, like that's a really fascinating time and a lot of weird ambiguity and moral line breaking, and they could play around with a lot of storylines there. So I'm excited to see what they do, and I'll keep my eye out. And I know some people are kind of over the Call of Duty thing, so I'm sorry if this story is not for you, but it does kind of excite me.
Yeah, and they sell it crazy well too, so you can't complain that they keep making Call of Duty games. People keep buying them, so
yeah. All right, so I guess we can move on to our loose topic this time, and this is the second part because last week we did our favorite Nintendo consoles, and so this one we're going to go on to our favorite PlayStation consoles. Now, before I go, let's go into yours. What is your favorite PlayStation console? Because I know you're a big PlayStation fan.
So I am, and obviously I stayed more focused on the home console. So I didn't really. I thought about PSP and Vita, but I was like, you know what? That's kind of its own thing.
So you're gonna stay with the 4.
So I'm staying with 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
And this was hard. Well, man, and I knew this was coming because I had started notes, and then when you confirmed like, oh yeah, we're doing PlayStation this week, I sat there looking, and I was like, I don't know. I was like, I love them all so much. I was like, what do I do? So I started kind of reflecting. I'm like, not looking at facts. I'm like, what games do I remember playing that impacted me? And that was, I loved it. Because I was like, because obviously, like, it's easy to be like, oh, PlayStation 4 is my favorite because it's like, the online works. I'm like, no, I'm not going to talk about infrastructure and the crappy online that Sony sometimes has. I was like, what games do I remember sitting in front of it? What games do I remember sitting and playing constantly? I had an option to buy it, at a time. Most of the time, anytime I bought a PlayStation console, I had the option to get the other one, the Xbox or whatever was available. And for some reason, I always chose PlayStation. So I'm like, when? And it came down to, I surprised myself with it, and we haven't discussed this, so I don't even know what ended up being your choice. I had to end up choosing the PlayStation 3 as my favorite as my favorite PlayStation console. And I know that's blasphemous for some people, because I get it that the online structure and the online store did not work. I understand that it just was pretty bad to get things on there. Those mandatory installs, anytime because you would download it. On PlayStation Now, on PS4 Now, you download and it does that weird copying thing. On PS3, you had to do the download, copy, install. And it would sit there forever. The infrastructure was terrible. The downloads took forever. I get all that. I am not an apologist. I'm not going to be like, yeah, PlayStation 3 Online was good. I do think their old storefront was better. Their new one's terrible now. And it's barely usable now. When I was on my PS3 recently to try to download things. But I have to think back to the games that really got to me. And where I was spending so much time. This is a system where we played The Last of Us. Well, I played The Last of Us the most, because that is a PS3 game. I know it was remastered. But that's where I played The Last of Us. That's where I first played Minecraft. This is where I played the Uncharted trilogy. This is where I played Metal Gear Solid 4, Red Dead Redemption, the Batman trilogy. I got into the God of War series because of God of War 3 that was on PS3. This is where I fell in love with the Killzone series. This is where I played BioShock. This is where I played Infamous. This is when I became, in a sense, a Sony fanboy. And that's why I had to choose the PlayStation 3, because that's the one that really pulled me in. The generation before that, I had an Xbox. I got it for Christmas. I had no option. So I got an Xbox. My brother got a PS2. And my other brother got a GameCube. And I always felt superior because I got the Xbox. Didn't have memory cards. They would leave their systems on with fans. I'll be chilling, turning it on and off because my save's saved. And all those great things. But when I did get to switch over, and when I got to the point where I got to choose to buy a 360 or a PS3, there was no competition. I was like, yeah, Halo's cool, but I got a PS3. I was super in love with Little Big Planet. I was super in love with... That's where I got to play Fallout and Portal and the Assassin's Creed series. Like, all these games that I super enjoy now, and I'm super invested in now, came from the PS3. I was playing tons of Spider-Man games on PS3, a variety of good and bad ones, and now I get to play some better ones on PS4. But it's the same aspect when I see that the roots of my favorite Nintendo system which was the Super Nintendo, was in the NES. It almost worked reverse because of the PS3 and because of what I loved to play on PS3. Is why I even considered getting a PS4. So it's my favorite console, my favorite PlayStation console, because it's what flipped the switch in me. It's when I started playing games that were just more than games. I wasn't just playing a bunch of Sonic games for no reason. That's all I played. I was experiencing story games. I was experiencing Heavy Rain. I was experiencing, things like Journey. In addition to, of course, my Sonic games that I've always been playing. But I got to, sit there and laugh at Drake in the Uncharted series. And I got emotional when you get to The Last of Us and you see Joel's daughter die right at the beginning. And these are all things that changed me, in a sense, and really got to captivate me. And it's what helped mold me, I guess, as a gamer. And, I get PlayStation had a lot of downfalls. The games didn't work right. Skyrim was not working. I remember trying to play Skyrim when it launched on PS3. didn't work. And all these other games, most Bethesda games didn't work. And you couldn't play the Mass Effect series until later on and stuff like that. But that game really helped mold me into the gamer I am today, I guess, in a weird sappy way, in a weird dumb way. But it has to be with your console because that's where my experiences were. I remember staying up super late playing on my PS3. Even when I did get a 360 later on, when it was, time for the squad to roll up on any whatever Call of Duty we were playing, it was on my PS3. I remember my PS3 getting, at one point, overheating. I get it. Physically, it's not my favorite console.
Yeah.
There's a reason it had to go through 3 iterations. You got the fat one, went to the super slim one, which I loved, and then there was that weird grill one, which I despise with the passion. But so much of what PlayStation is and what I am as a gamer lives and breathes off what the PS3 did. Obviously more their success story than their shortcomings. And that's why I had to choose it. That's why, hands down, after when I was looking at it, I was like, I have mad respect for PS1. I love the games on there, those Final Fantasy, Legacy of Kains, some of the Tomb Raider games. Loved it. PS2 was a half and half where I really enjoyed the console, but most of that stuff I was playing was available elsewhere. It was available, they had their exclusives. I'm not going to lie. But the fact is, like, if I had to choose one system and get all their exclusives and to get that family together, it'd be the PS3 because the PS4, I love my PS4. I absolutely adore it. And instantly I was like, well, it didn't have to be the PS4 is my favorite console. But when I looked at it, it's like, well, most of the stuff I play on there, like on my shelf, a lot of stuff's third party. I can play anywhere. But my PS3 games, especially now that they're locked behind no backwards compatibility, those PS3 games stand a chance with me. I got good at Street Fighter because of my PS3. I got good to an extent at Call of Duty Black Ops 1 and 2 because of my PS3. I enjoyed the story of God of War, the story of Uncharted, like I said. All these experience and stuff that just, when people ask me what games they should play, come from my experience with the PS3, especially the first party studio ones that are exclusive, really thrive for me on the PlayStation 3. And I just don't think I'd still be playing games and stuff because I did take a long break before I got my PlayStation 3 in 2010. I think I saved up to get it. Without the PS3, I don't think I'd still be kind of in this kind of, that's when I started purposely looking like, who made this game? And I looked at the developers and I learned about Insomniac and Naughty Dog, and I understood the difference between first party, second party, why, these games were on PlayStation 3 and why they weren't on Xbox 360 and vice versa. And it opened the world to, of the ecosystem and made me really appreciate developers and, the presidents of the companies and the things they did. And it also made me get really hard on them when they would make stupid decisions and lock things behind certain aspects and not change things. And, they took this weird route when their network was attacked. But that's Sony, but the PlayStation was that door to me. So that's why, for me, PlayStation 3 is my favorite PlayStation console. No one can change my mind.
All right. Oof. So we've had this conversation before, lightly, where how rough of a generation that was for me, personally. I also had a PS3. I didn't have the Xbox 360. So, and all my friends had 360s. So I was the lone guy on the PS3 at the time. Mm-hmm. And boy, was I going through it. My PS3 barely ran anything because I had that piano black one the entire generation. Like, I never had the upgrades. So, like, by the end of that generation, like, Last of Us was killing my PS3. Like, it was just screaming for dear life. So this was a tough one for me because I kind of came to, like, a two-way tie between two consoles that I was having really trouble with, because every generation for PlayStation, for the most part, I kind of had a good time, generally. With all the consoles, I really enjoyed having them all. I didn't really get into the Xbox ecosystem until well into this generation. Mm-hmm. So, for the most part, they were relatively uncontested, except for specifically the PS2 generation, where I couldn't choose the PS2 just because I was a GameCube boy. All around, I was just a GameCube guy. Mm-hmm. So, that edged it out for me personally. So, the PS2, as revolutionary as that console was, and as many phenomenal games were on that console, especially like when I was playing like Metal Gear and the older Call of Duties at the time, the PS2 was it for me. But it got edged out because of the GameCube. There's just too many hits on that one. So I kind of came down to the PS1 and the PS4. And the PS4 has so many phenomenal games. But I have to think, when was just Sony all around, games, first party, third party, the console itself, just killing it? And I got to choose the PS1, personally. Mm-hmm. Now, yes, y'all know I like old games. I'm an old man. I know, make fun of me. But man, I just love the PS1 because kind of all of my favorite genres are represented in a phenomenal way on this console. You guys know I really prefer some of those older Final Fantasy games. All of my favorite Final Fantasy games are on the PS1. 7 and 9 obviously natively, 6 via the Final Fantasy Anthology Collection. If you look at Chrono Cross is on this game, super underrated in my opinion. People don't love it. It is what it is. But yeah, Legacy of Kain, obviously. The medieval game originally on here. Spyro holds up amazingly. Crash holds up amazingly. CTR on this game. Also, Gran Turismo's on here as well. Ridge Racer. Like, there's a lot of phenomenal games on the PlayStation 1, both with RPGs. Some of the shooters are a little crude, I will give you. But hey, at the time, Medal of Honor was hitting. I loved that game. And obviously, a lot of people would go back to the N64 and say some of the shooters on there are kind of superior to the PlayStation 1 shooters. That's a matter of taste, I suppose. But yeah, when I talk about one single generation of sheer mass of games that I really, really enjoy, it's probably the PS1 that percentage-wise has the highest. For me, there's definitely a lot of crap on this console, don't get it twisted, but I just feel like when all the developers were really firing on all cylinders with those hits, and PlayStation 1 was dominating. I give PlayStation a lot of credit because they kind of came out of nowhere. They were trying to make something work with Nintendo. That fell through, and so they came onto the scene, a brand new console. And when you think about when a new person came in and dominated, no one had did what PlayStation did since probably Nintendo back in the early 80s, the mid 80s, when they came in after the game Crash and dominated, but they were coming off a Crash. PlayStation came in and were going up against juggernauts. And obviously Sega was in a weird position at that time, but I mean, hey, the Genesis was still a pretty viable platform at that time. Mm-hmm. Nintendo were dominant during the Super Nintendo era. But they were fighting against Sega, and obviously they made interesting decisions going towards cartridge when the industry as a whole was moving towards disc-based medium. So PlayStation saw an opportunity. They were a brand newcomer, and they went in and they killed it. And I mean, since PlayStation, who has debuted that same way? I mean, Microsoft came in with a good console, but to say that they got their footing, they didn't really get their footing until the 360, to be honest with you. And obviously, other than that, I mean, the Ouya and Stadia have not done half of what either of them have done. So, I mean, I just got to give PlayStation its credit for a brand new debut on a new console, courting, third parties. I mean, they literally stole Square Enix from how many games that they have on Nintendo consoles. Mm-hmm. And then the first game that they released in the Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy VII, which is, I mean, to this day, revolutionary. Yep. I mean, we're getting a remake now because that holds so much weight in the game industry now. So that's why I love the PlayStation 1. Not to mention, the PlayStation 1 has so many hits that they're, instead of releasing new games, they're trying to remake PlayStation 1 games to bring them to the forefront now. I mean, that's why we're getting the Medievals. That's why we're getting the Crashes and the Spyros. We're probably going to get Twisted Metal at some point. So I just wanted to give a shout out to PlayStation 1. PlayStation 4, it was tough. It was close because in terms of some of my favorite games of all time, PS4 did a phenomenal job. I mean, Sony killed it this generation. Yeah, they have their issues with some of the non customer friendly actions that they make, especially with crossplay and backwards compatibility and stuff like that. But I mean, man, that's Sony first party. I don't think they've ever been killing it in the way they are now. And obviously that's a matter of taste. That's a personal opinion. But in terms of, I mean, what they're about to do with Last of Us 2, and I mean, hey, man, Spider-Man, Bloodborne, God of War, man, they just snapped this generation. Uncharted 4, like, my God. So just wanted to give them a shout out to the PlayStation 1. That's my personal favorite.
Yeah, and I thought about PlayStation 1 a lot because I was like, and instantly I felt like that's where I needed to go, and I pretty much worked my way up that way to see what was going on. And it was a contender for a while because I was like, yeah, man, the Final Fantasy 7 was on there, 7, 8, 9.
Oh, I'm tripping too. Metal Gear Solid.
Yeah.
Resident Evil. Silent Hill. Come on, man. Turok. Dino Crisis.
I mean, even if you go to the smaller titles, I mean, you had Ape Escape, which truly used the DualShock. You know, not only did you get one, you know, N64 had that one crappy analog stick, but you know, we had two. We're like, whoa, what am I gonna do with two? And then, you know, obviously it ended up becoming the camera stick eventually. But for like Ape Escape, the first I think 3 Ape Escapes or 2 Ape Escapes, you know, that's your weapon. That's how you use. That's how your angles. That's how all this works. And they, you know, they changed the game with that. You sure, you know, 64 had that stick already and things like that, but it just didn't work the way that it worked on PlayStation. It worked so well when you held that control and you like knew what to do with those sticks.
Yeah, not to I mean, just so many big franchises were born on this console. Mm-hmm. Specifically, GTA 5 dominated right now. Where was that birthed? The PS1, man.
Yeah.
Obviously, a very different game, top down. I'll give you that. But I mean, and again, there are plenty of examples where the PS1 suffered from the same problem that the N64 suffered from, which was certain established franchises not making the jump into 3D that great. Mm-hmm. And that was obviously evidenced by games like Qbert, for example, on PS1, which is not so great. But like, hey, even like Persona 5, one of the biggest JRPGs right now. Persona, Shin Megami Tensei Persona, the first one, on PS1. So like,
yeah.
The legacy of the PlayStation 1 carries on very heavy today in a way that very few consoles do.
Yeah, I mean, even when you think even broader, like this is, you know, we had those 2 Spider-Man games on PS1, which were completely different from...
Oh, the Neversoft ones?
Yeah, they're completely different from the Spider-Man. People were, when you heard like, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or X-Men or Spider-Man games or any of those games, people always thought like side-scrolling brawlers, and those games were fine. But the first time you were able to, you know, see Spider-Man on the PlayStation 1 and change costumes and web swing, and even though it's nothing compared to what we have now, but
that game's still pretty awesome. That game, the original Spider-Man.
Yeah, those 2 games are still very good, and you know, they're limited by their stuff. Well, obviously on what they released on, but they were super good in time. You can't compare those to the new one. You can't dock it for not having the weight that Spider-Man on PlayStation 4 has, but because they were in their own thing, they were so much more comic book. I feel like they were so much more integrated there, and that lives on the PlayStation 1. So the PlayStation 1 is such much more than just a springboard. It's like without this, the tree that is Sony wouldn't have grown without that seed, which was the PlayStation 1.
Yeah, I mean the fact that the PlayStation 1 even played out the way it did is just mind-blowing, again, because they were just so new to the console space. And the fact that the 3D generation jump was so awkward for everybody, and Sony included, like it was just a really awkward generation. A lot of those N64 games, especially those Saturn games, look nuts now.
Yeah.
And hey, a lot of PlayStation 1 games look nuts too. I wouldn't delude myself, but I mean, there's some cool stuff that they did on that game, and unfortunately, the PlayStation Classic is terrible, so it's not the easiest thing to revisit in terms of collections like that. Mm-hmm. But those were our favorite PlayStation consoles, and I guess next week we can take a look at our favorite Xbox consoles, and that's going to be a little bit tougher, obviously, because there's only really three to pull off. I guess you can do 4 if you want to consider the One X as a differential, but it's kind of like a marginal upgrade to the One, so the One is kind of just one generation. So I guess next week we could do our favorite Xbox conversation, but it obviously will be a little bit of a broader discussion rather than like choosing one console, because again, there's just a little bit less to choose from here.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to kind of get in that discussion.
And then the week after, we'll finally get to the one we're both the most excited for, which is our favorite Sega. Oh, God.
Oh, we're going to rip into them, aren't we?
I can't wait. I can't wait. 32X. No, all right. I'm not going to do that. All right. Another episode. This was episode 17, I believe?
Yep, episode 17.
Look at us. All right, so we'll be back next Sunday with a brand new episode, episode 18. So be sure to check us out. And if you haven't noticed already on the channel, we break up all the segments into individual videos. So if you choose to consume the podcast like that, you can do that. It's on all streaming services, so be sure to check it out. This is Jabrel, and I am with
Steve.
And this is the NeoVintage Podcast. See you guys.